Welcome back to the channel, everybody, and we thought we'd do a few little episodes on how to rig boats in the UK with all the electronics and gubbins that we take with us. I remember 2018 I did a podcast in America trying to explain to our American cousins about all the faff we go to when we're fishing for predominantly lure fishing in the UK and trying to use all the electronics, and they just didn't believe me. And at the end of the podcast, the co-host turned around to me and said, "You pay for that as well?" So yep, we do, and today I'm going to show you several little things that may help you in your boat fishing in the UK. The first bit of tech we're going to look at is the bow mount. Now people might say, what is a bow mount? A bow mount is basically an electric engine, but it has all sorts of nice little components to it where basically it fixes itself to satellites and GPS, and it helps you do all sorts of things. So we're predominantly talking about something called a spot lock. This is the traditional spot lock. Back in the day, when we wanted to hold position, hold anchor, this would go over the side and that would do, and the boat would be slewing about all over the place on the rope, and it was a nightmare. So any delicate presentation that you needed was absolutely impossible, unless it was a very calm day. So things have moved on, and thankfully we've got modern technology to help us. However, how do you get the big bow mount onto boats of all different sizes? It is an absolute nightmare, and I'm going to show you my way. Not the best way, but it's one way that I've come up with over the years, and it works, and that will do. Here we go. So this is the bow mount, and I've got a clamp on mine. Lots of people do it different ways. This is the way that's worked for me. It's a bit antisocial, as you'll see later in the boat, but I've got a clamp, and the clamp goes on, if we can see this, the front of the boat, like so. And I've got this strap, which is very technical. What I do then is just tie a little overhand knot so it's nice and tight. And you'll see why this is important in a minute. This helps me secure the bow mount so it doesn't rock backwards and forwards too much. So just do that. I have played with the idea of doing clips, but because every boat is a different size and every boat has a different distance from its eyelet to there, you can't really use a clip. So that's that. It takes 10 seconds. Right, stage 2. Okay, the next thing I do is I use wood between the end of the bolt and the side of the boat, because obviously I don't want to damage the fiberglass boats. I'm sure Anglian Water would not be very impressed if I put holes in their boats. So as you can see, these bits of wood, they've been used lots of times now. I literally put the wood, obviously it's going to be the other side, but under the gunnels, but obviously the other side, and I then tighten the clamp against the wood so it then pushes against this, damages the wood and leaves the fiberglass in place. So this is the next stage, and I should have used WD-40 on the bolts. You're going to hear some nice sound effects in a minute, a lot of squeaking. I actually got my stages slightly wrong. What I meant to say is I actually put the strap on next, so ooh, sounds a bit weird, but you know what I'm saying. So the strap goes on the back of the clamp, which is why I tied it on at the front. I then take this around the seat on the boat and I tighten it up so the clamp's actually in place. It's a bit fiddly because, like I said, all these boats are different sizes and things get rusty, and I should have used some WD-40, but I'll release this and it will work in a second. Okay, so just tighten the strap up. Get the boat, get the bow mount nicely centred. It's not too tight, not so I'm going to break anything, and that's in place. And then I go back to the very technical pieces of wood, put those under the gunnels, tighten it with the clamp, and she will be solid all day, we hope. Now this is the awkward bit, and this is the bit that's going to probably squeal, and there we go. You get a nice echo in the valley. It's not too bad today. Brad has just asked me why I don't oil them, and I said my theory is the rustier the bolts are, the less likely they are to unscrew. So that's my excuse for having a rusty bolt. The innuendos on this one's incredible. But there we go, nice and tight. And like I said, the bolts are against the wood, protecting the inside of the boat. Right, let's get the battery on. We now need a 12 volt leisure battery. Back in the day, I used to have the proper leisure batteries, the old school ones. They were bloody heavy. These days, I've upgraded to a lithium. This is a game changer. Not only does it reduce the weight, but also it has far greater capacity throughout the whole day. So they're expensive, I know, but they are really good. And this one's got a Bluetooth capability, so I can check its power voltage throughout the day and check it's working properly. It normally lasts me 2 days with this setup, so it's a really, really good setup. And it's a lot lighter than it used to be, so that's pretty cool. Right, what I do is I stick the anchor down here, stick the battery on top, just orientate it, and then, as I was told many years ago, I always put the positive on first. So I just use these clips, it's a lot easier. A lot of people screw them on. There's no right or wrong way. Clip it on. And then with these batteries, you have to turn them on. So the button for that's just there. Leave it 2 or 3 seconds to get it all going, and hopefully when I press the button here, it should fire up. Perfect. Okay, so that's on, and the last thing we need to do before we get out fishing is just make sure my remote is paired. I'll turn that on with a tick. There's an OK, and it should pick up the engine, and it has done straight away. So this goes around my neck, or it goes around the more gubbins that I'm going to put on later. And once we're out fishing, I'll show you 1 or 2 little tricks that you can do with the bow mount that maybe you haven't seen before. But I'm not going to give all my secrets away for obvious reasons. One of the little tricks that I like to use when using the bow mount is to actually have the bow mount deployed when I'm drift fishing off the drogue. So if Bradley just pans around here, we've got the drogue in the water, and oh, he's been a naughty boy, he hasn't put it over his little, that's it. So let me show you. So these, I showed you these earlier, these Witchwood boat clamps are really good. So basically the way you want to use them is not how we've got them used here, because the rope's a bit short. So we've got the rope around the seat a couple of times, and you can just finely adjust how much you want the drogue to be out. So that's taken around that once. We've got it about perfect with it just being around that as it is, because it was a bit of a fluke. But when you've got longer ropes, you can use the clamps to help you. So the drogue's set up really nicely, it's slowing us right down, and we're on a drift. Now, it feels like the wind's coming across my right shoulder, but actually the boat's going straight downwind, not straight down, across the wind slightly. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use my chart, and I'm tracking where we're going. So we're going to get a nice like ant line, dotted ants all the way up here on our first drift. And then if we have no contacts, I'm then going to set a second drift either to the left or the right of it. If we start getting follows and contacts from pike, we want to go over the same drift again. But this is the problem. The wind's changing all the time. You never ever go on the same drift. So I'm going to use the bow mount to keep adjusting the boat as we're going down the drift. So I'll use the track that I feel has the best chance of us catching, and I'll use the bow mount to slowly pull us into the wind or slowly push us away. Now with this technique, you can't go too quick. About 2.5, 3 max on the remote is as much as you can go without the drogue being pulled out of the water so it doesn't bite. So you have to just use a bit of sense with this, but it's a really good way of using the bow mount to actually use the drogue with some kind of direction. Now, really experienced competition trout anglers will tell you can actually adjust the ropes to change direction. But when you're fly fishing or lure fishing for predators, you don't want to be messing about with your drogue, just use the bow mount. So, little tip there of how you can use the bow mount to readjust your drift when you're fishing on the drogue. Come on, pikeys. Right, so that's it. We had a bit of fun today. Hope you enjoyed the bow mount side of the video. Why do we go to this much effort? It's because we love going fishing, but putting stuff on these rental boats, as you can see, is a real pain in the butt. However, now to get the stuff down, which is great, not. If you'd like to see other content like this, let me know in the comments below, and we'll see what we can do going forward in the future.